you some more emails, Andrew.
Okay.
I just did the strangest thing for whatever reason. I went and like just put some mouthwash in. I thought like, I should probably, freshen up my breath for this interview.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Through the screen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it could be that bad. I really, who knows?
So he's still connecting to audio right now.
Okay. He's in Texas Hill country, so this might take a while.
No worries.
The internet there is slow. I don't actually know that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe because it's so big, there's not enough Wi-Fi signal to go throughout the entire state.
Throughout the entire state, yeah. Johnny, you there, buddy?
So he might be able to hear us, but we can't hear him.
Look at him looking so fucking stoic. Just like a fucking monster.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, so his audio's still not connecting.
Weird.
Oh, look at that skull in the background too. That's so
That's
sick. That's awesome. Look, that looks like a Power Charles Xavier office.
Yeah. Looks really good. I think that's his new podcast room.
Nice. So it almost connected.
I think we can't hear you, bud. He probably built that office like by hand and handcraft welded everything together. Well, that's the kind of guy he is.
I've seen some videos of that he's posted on Instagram about it being in his shop and all the stuff he's working on.
Dude, it's crazy. It was like, having to deal with buildings and like gyms and shit forever. And, he's been in California for a really long time. He moved to Texas. He basically built his own gym, like with his own hands, welding it all together. It's like half gym, half auto shop. It's fucking insane.
That's great.
Yeah. It's,
can you guys hear me?
Hey, Johnny.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Nothing. I was just trying to get my wireless headset, so I'm not always like yanking on shit. So
nice, man. You look great, bud. How are things?
Everything's going good. How are you doing, Dad?
Hey, man. I'm trying to sleep, brother. You know the deal.
Oh yeah. I know it well. It's good.
I was just telling the guys that that's your new little podcast room. I'm sure you built it by hand and chopped the fucking trees down and sanded them and welded them and you shot the cow or the pig, that the leather, the seat that you're sitting on and everything.
I wish it was that amazing a story, but when we bought the house, they had this really bitchin' horse barn here. And I came in and this guy like Barn Pros, which is this custom barn builder, I think somewhere in like Olympia, Washington, built this barn and sent it down, and then they had it erected, and it's like 36 foot by 36 foot, but it's 2-story. So I went in and I realized that we didn't have horses. So I was like, we could convert this into office space. So I polished the floors, had a guy come in and spray foam. And then I put up like that metal siding, that kind of galvalume sheeting on the inside.
Yeah.
And then like an idiot, had some hillbilly bring me out a whole bunch of cedar planks and planed all these cedar planks. And then 3 weeks on a scissor lift, nailed up 3,000 square foot of cedar on the ceiling. And we just had AC put in. I just finished the shower, and so we built a pretty epic office down here.
Dude, that's dope. Now, where is that on your property? Because I was at the gym in the house. Where that's like, is that further in the back?
No, like it's if you walk down towards the house, it's to the right of the house, and it's just kind of down behind the trees.
Oh, okay.
So that's where our office is, and like I have like an upstairs loft that I'm finishing, and it's got these big barn doors that open, and then it's like 136 yards to my feeders. So we sit up there during hunting season, and that's how I hunt.
That's awesome. I see you got a couple pigs.
Oh yeah, they so we went to California about 4 or 5 weeks ago to go see my cousins and everybody we hadn't seen. And when I left, like the pigs know when I'm gone, and they came through and just decimated our property. So I had went and reset up all my cams, and then I would lay there in bed, and like my phone would buzz when the cams would go off. I would check it, and then I get up, and I got a pretty robust night hunting setup with like a night vision and lasers. And so I go out there with like a ballistic helmet, PDS 14, my FPL laser in my boxers, and I'm out there just fucking drilling these hogs in my underwear. So it's not necessarily hunting as much as it's just like varmint extermination.
Yeah, it's correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a serious issue down there in hill country, right?
Yeah, so there's 1.7 million feral hogs in Texas, and they do billions of dollars worth of damage. And what's crazy is hogs, I think they have 3 litters a year and can drop anywhere from like 6 to 10 piglets.
Wow.
And so just to keep them at a constant, you almost have to hunt them to 70% extinction. Jeez. So we shoot them, like 20 minutes ago, I just got a text from a buddy who's got a big lease up in Brady. He must have sent me pictures of every one of his feeder with probably a dozen hogs, and he was like, help. And I'm like, he's like, what should I do? And he doesn't have any night vision setups, and they basically lay and they hide in the brush during the day, and then they come out at night. So you got to almost hunt them at night exclusively. Wow. But that takes, a little bit of money to be able to invest in a setup, unless you worked as a contractor for the military and law enforcement, and then you tend to somehow ancillary come up with this stuff. But there's that, and you just got to be able to go out there and just have zero remorse and just take the fight to these things.
Yeah.
That big hog I shot the other day, I was kind of laughing because I went to go pick him up, and he was about 250 pounds. So I had to scoop him around the middle and then put him side by side. And then I drove him out in my neighbor's, and I had a Sawzall, and I cut his head off because I wanted the skull. So we ended up taking it to the processor, and they put it in this big vat of beetles. Yeah. And the beetles eat it, pick it clean, and then you put it on it. But I was out in the middle of the pasture with a Sawzall cutting the head off of a pig in boxer shorts with lights on the side by side. And I'm thinking to myself, God, I'm such a ghoul. If anybody was watching this right now, they would be like, what is going on out there? I just kind of laugh, and I'm like, that's Texas. And people out here, man, that's just a normal day occurrence.
That's crazy, dude. That's amazing.
Wow.
So just so you know, we've been recording, so we've kind of already started the whole thing. We're gonna start sending the email out to anyone who kind of let us know they wanted to join us as far as live stuff goes. We're just gonna throw some questions out there and just kind of continue our casual conversation. Really appreciate you taking the time. This is awesome, dude. It was you're one of the top people that I definitely wanted to chat with, and I think you got a whole bunch of awesome stuff to kind of share, and really appreciate it. So
awesome.
as we invite people in, it is kind of a tradition, because we're 10 years old here at markbell.com. We wanted to see if you could share an epic poop story, whether it's from your playing days, on the field, off the field, anything you have, whether it's you or somebody else. I think I remember you sharing a couple of stories with me of some on the field shenanigans. So if you got any of those, we can kind of start with that, and then we'll totally smoothly transition into the rest of the interview.
I guess it wouldn't be a Mark Bell podcast without some weird poop story. I know he's really into it. I really wish I had some amazing for some reason what is it, incontinence, is that the word? Not being able to hold it has never been much of an issue for me. But I have played with a lot of guys that did have issues. But the one that is probably the funniest one, which has been later in life, is I didn't realize that I was gluten intolerant until I was a little bit older and I got tested. And ironically, I was just a couple days ago, I was just down in Georgia working. I went down and spoke for Flexi, which is a federal law enforcement training center in Brunswick, Georgia. And one of my buddies who's down there is a pretty country dude, and we went to his house for dinner. And I had been at his house for dinner probably 6 or 7 years ago, and they did a bunch of like chicken fried steaks. And so as I was eating this, you know, realizing that this is all flour and not something as you're gluten intolerant, and back then I was way worse than I am today. And all of a sudden I'm like sitting there eating, and you start like sweating, and I'm like, oh my God, like I'm gonna have a real problem. And I was like, hey, where's the restroom? And he points to a door that's 3 feet, like on the dining room area, like 3 feet from where his wife is sitting. And I'm like, all right. So I go in there and shut the door. And I was like looking for a fan. I was like, man, maybe I can put white noise on. And then it ended up just being a bad deal. And I came out, and the awkward look of everybody, and I was like, excuse me. And then the funny part was when I went back to their the other day when I was at their house for dinner, his wife's like, I didn't put any flour or any gluten on anything for you. And I was like, thank you. You remember too? She's like, oh yeah, we've told that story many times. I'm like, and then the funny part, Tex was there, and Tex was like, reminding me of it. I was like, God damn it. You have one gluten bomb, and next thing you know, you'll never live it down. So that was a funny story.
I don't believe you that you only had one gluten bomb, but that was probably just one of the most memorables.
Yeah, I've been gluten bombed before. I remember we were in a barbecue place in Oakland when we were teaching a seminar, and I like, I don't know if you remember Everett and Jones Barbecue, which is down on San Pablo in Berkeley, Oakland area.
Yep.
And man, they got me. Like they thickened their sauce with a bunch of flour, and yeah, and then you're like, ooh, it's so hot in the car. Like, I don't know, we hit a skull, you know, just bad deal. But yeah, for the most part, like I've been pretty good. But like for probably, man, almost like 10 years, like the gluten bomb ended up getting me, and then probably 2 or 3 years ago, no more issues. Like I you know, and occasionally you'll eat something and you're like, I'll know as soon as I taste it, but it doesn't affect me in the same way. So maybe I'm evolving.
Yeah. What would you attribute that to? You know, besides evolution more than anything? I mean, is it just you being more careful, or is it, you know, maybe the restaurant industry or people or manufacturing being a little bit different, you know, stricter guidelines? I mean, quite honestly, that doesn't make sense, right? Yeah. You would think that it would be the other way around, but what would you attribute it to?
Dumb luck.
Dumb luck. All right, that's good.
Maybe I had some inflammation in the gut, or maybe I was reacting to things, or maybe like it wasn't a gluten intolerance, is maybe it was some like inflammation within the gut. I mean, it could have been some other issue, and like it just became exasperated. It's kind of like diverticulitis, for example. You know, people get those pockets, and then they eat like peanuts or nuts or something, and they get stuck in the pockets and have tremendous pain, and they think they're allergic to peanuts, and then the diverticulitis heals, and they can go back to eating those things and don't have the same you know, allergy reaction. So I don't necessarily understand the mechanism. Maybe, yeah, I don't really know, man. It used to be like, even if I drank a beer, I would feel awful. Now I can drink beer and I don't have any issues. So I don't know what it is. Maybe I fixed something. That's the only thing I could think of. I wouldn't say like I don't really go out and eat pizza very regularly, but like I've had pizza, you know, maybe once or twice in the last year, and it didn't really bother me. We went to Zachary's Pizza when I was in San Francisco last we went out to work with the guys from Cal Strength with Dave's NFL guys. I took Tex to Zachary's, and we crushed an entire pizza, and he was like, this is the best pizza. Are you all right? I'm like, yeah, I feel great. Like this would have killed me before, but for some reason I'm okay. That's
nice. That's awesome. Well, again, so most of the people are in that we've sent out, and the people, you know, might kind of get a couple more people kind of streaming in. But, you know, give us a little bit of, you know, kind of backstory, origin stories, because, I mean, to be honest with you, and Josh said it, you kind of look like Professor Xavier with your headphones on. It almost looks like you got the helmet on and everything in the back. You look so sick. This is awesome, and the setup is so dope. Really appreciate your time. Again, thank you. Kind of let everyone
I actually built that.
Oh, I know. I told him. Johnny, I told him, brother. I told him.
Yeah, no, I heard you talking up the building. I mean, that thing's 92 by 50 foot. We got 80 foot by 50 indoors, and built that whole gym, and then obviously built the shop, and there's a lift in there now too. So it's, but yeah, no, for all the welding and fabrication and, you know, working on stuff and building stuff, it's like you you got to have a workshop if you're going to have a property this big, because there's constantly always something to fix, and then you got to have a skill set on how to fix it.
Yeah, no, that's so sick. So talk us through kind of, origin stories of John Welbourn, kind of coming up as a kid. How'd you get into lifting? How'd you get into football, high school, college, pros, and kind of, accident. And this is a real story that, one of the questions accidentally stumbling into the CrossFit games, and then, starting your company and kind of moving into kind of where you are, let's just start things off. And, as we go, I'll interrupt you and, ask some questions.
Speaking of interrupting, if I could jump in real quick, we actually have a message from Kaylor Woolham from last week, and then a message from Mark Bell, actually. So if it's cool, I can play those right now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No worries. So thanks again, John. Thanks everybody for jumping on the live webinar. So what we have now is a message from Kaylor, a fellow Texan, and then we actually have a message from Mark Bell, straight for you. So I'm going to go ahead and play both of those right now. Once I find it, there we go.
We're doing something here where we're trying to, get a kind of message like Matt Wenning gave to you. We have John Welbourn coming on, for our next guest. Fellow Texas boy. You have any questions or anything to say to John before we kind of send you off for the rest of your day?
Yeah. So I asked him, so what is it that makes Texas so great? Like, why is it that we're all just a little bit better here than everybody else at everything? So I don't really know why that is. I just know that that's just kind of a fact.
And then real quick from Mark himself.
Welcome to markbell.com. Thank you guys so much for your participation. I'm going to talk about one of my super friends. I'm really fortunate and lucky to know some real mutants around the world, and John Welbourn falls into a category of mutants for sure. He's one of those 1%er guys that I know. He's an unbelievable coach. He's an unbelievable father. He's somebody I look up to in many different ways, but he played in the NFL for a decade. Just to play in the NFL for 10 years is unbelievable, but he wasn't a guy that just survived the NFL. He wasn't a guy who was sitting on the bench. He was a guy that was blocking and trying to beat up people like Warren Sapp. I mean, he was on the field participating, and he's just an unbelievable talent. But one thing that separated John from a lot of other people was his work ethic, and how, I mean, this is going back probably 6-7 years ago, before you saw all these hydration products, before you heard people talking so much about hydration and the importance of it, before you heard people talking about how important it is to take care of your body and how important elimination diets are. John Welbourn was on the forefront of that, and that's how he was able to be in the NFL and thrive in the NFL for such a long time. You guys know how difficult sports are, and you can only imagine how hard it would be to play professional football on that level for so many years. John Welbourn is someone that's been able to figure it out, and he was able to figure it out not just through being genetically gifted, because he is a genetically gifted mutant. He is 6'5", he is 280 pounds, and he is all those things. But he took that talent and he took that as a responsibility, and he learned the game. He learned football inside and out, and on top of that, he learned how to take care of himself in the weight room. John Welbourn has amazing information when it comes to strength training. He's a Westside Barbell disciple, and he's developed a lot of his own great information. I think you guys are going to really enjoy the information that John has. Well-versed, not just in the weight room, but also in nutrition, also with recovery, with sleep, and in addition to that, he just has it all, worked out to where you can optimize your training to the best of your ability. Without further ado, here's John Welbourn exclusively on markbell.com.
Hey.
Hey. All right. Dude, yeah, that was great. Just a little history on me. I grew up in Southern California. I was the youngest of 3 boys. We played a ton of different sports growing up, beach, swimming, soccer, basketball, baseball, every sport you can imagine. I mean, rode bikes, played outside, and pretty much had a pretty amazing life growing up. When my older brother was probably, maybe 12 years old, some local kid in the neighborhood beat him up pretty well. And he came home crying, told my dad. And my dad wasn't much of a fighter, but decided that, this is the 80s, this is Karate Kid era, and took my brother down to this karate dojo and down to this guy like Sensei Hibura, this, traditional kind of Japanese Shotokan deal. So he takes my brother down, and after about 3 or 4 weeks later, after he came home and started beating up on my other brother and I, we all went to karate. So next thing I know, got really into martial arts. Did that until I was probably 10 or 11, and then thought kicking was stupid and wanted to get into boxing. And the boxing was extremely impactful for me, not only as a skill, but in development. And continued to play a ton of sports. And then when I went to high school, my other brothers who were playing college football told me all the cool kids in high school play football. So then I didn't want to be uncool, so I decided to go out and play football. And when I got out there, I thought it was kind of a stupid sport. You had to wear all this gear, you push people around, like a bunch of just didn't make a ton of sense to me. And when I got out there, I remember the very first day they lined me up on D-line, this guy came, like we snapped up the ball and I hit the guy square in the face and the guy fell down and the coach was like, great. And I thought, oh man, I kind of like this sport. So, it was years before, like football was kind of an afterthought, or not really an afterthought, but I remember lifting weights was something I would wanted to do for a really long time. And it was funny, I like couldn't necessarily remember why. And then I had this kind of strange epiphany and I remembered exactly why I wanted to lift weights. And when I was probably, man, I must have been about 10 or 11 years old, and we were at the beach. And we had got done with junior lifeguards, and we were all kind of hanging around waiting to walk up the hill to where our parents picked us up. And we saw this like crowd in the distance, and like people, like we could hear some people like talking loud, and it just like looked like this mass. And we kind of were like watching. And all of a sudden, out of the mass came this guy walking, and he was probably 6'4", 300 and plus pounds. Chiseled, wearing like a little pair of shorts, a tank top, and his chest was so big, like you could have sat like a drink on top of it. And this dude was just strolling, and people were like the Incredible Hulk, like just kind of turning up. And we saw him, and we're like, ah! And we started following him. And then he turned and like took a step at us and like went like kind of, you know, like punked us. And we were like, oh, ran back, and he kind of laughed and kept walking. And that dude was Lyle Alzado. So Lyle Alzado,
dude, that's amazing.
Yeah, he was the most physically impressive human being I had ever seen. And I remember thinking at that moment, like, I want to be big and strong. And I didn't necessarily know how it was going to work. I didn't know how I was going to do it. And I remember telling my dad I want to lift weights, and he was like, well, that's stupid. It's just counting to 10 over and over again. A bunch of morons do that stuff. So he kind of squashed my dream in that way. And then I knew, I talked to my mom about getting me a gym membership, and they like, just didn't happen. And then when I got to high school, when I learned, like, so wait a minute, if you go play football, the cool guys, okay, that's cool. But we get to lift weights too. You have to lift weights every day. And I was like, finally, I'm going to get to lift weights. And I went in that very first day, and I was so excited to bench and to squat and everything. And I remember I benched 115 pounds, and all my friends benched like 185 and 200. And I didn't get to work out with them. I had to work out by myself because they didn't want to take all the big weights off. And I remember the shame of like being weak. And I remember like sitting on the bench and looking at them, looking at the weight and being like, I'm weak today, but I'm going to be really strong in the future. And I ended up benching 315 when I left high school. I benched 500 when I was 22, squatted 610 at 19, deadlifted 585 for 12 in an RDL. I mean, 20 pull-ups with 90 pounds between my waist, over 300 pounds, ran the sub 5 flat, verted 32, 34 inches. Played 10 years in the NFL, started 110 games, 10 playoff appearances, made Madden's horse trailer. I mean, it was, I was 6 foot 165 when I left high school. I was 6'4", 265, and then I grew another 2 inches in college and put on another 30, 40 pounds. So it was something that was very important to me. And I just remember, like, now I can, like, it's funny, like for a long time I was like, I don't know where this came from. And then as I told somebody the story, and I like remembered it, and was like, holy shit, I remember following him and thinking like, man, I want to lift weights. And you guys are familiar with like Lyle Alzado at his prime. That dude was juiced to the gills.
Absolutely.
And was massive. I mean, would like show up to these powerlifting meets and like just smash dudes and didn't even power lift. I mean, he was just a monster of a human being.
Now, did you ever get to meet Lyle like later on? Like in your career?
We had two other run-ins.
Tell him this story, or do you even remember that, or is this literally just kind of coming to you the past couple of years?
No, so then like probably about 2 years later, my brother and I were riding our bikes, and he lived in Palos Verdes where I grew up, and he almost hit me and my brother with it when he was driving his Rolls Royce and gave us the finger. We were riding our bikes, and like the bike lane fucking swerved at us and gave us the finger. So we remember that one. But it was all of a sudden when I went to high school or junior high school, I think I was a freshman or maybe I was in 8th grade. Art Shell became the head coach of the Raiders, and I played basketball with Chris Shell, who was Art Shell's son. And so I got invited to go to one of the Raider games as a young kid. And I got to meet all these guys like Howie Long and Bo Jackson and all these dudes who were just like these storybook human beings. And I remember seeing Lyle Alzado, and he was so, what's the right word? Like off kilter, full tilt, that I like as a 12-year-old, 13-year-old kid, I wasn't about to go over and ask this guy who was like, looked like something out of a science experiment and acting like he needed to be in a mental home. Like, hey, Mr. Alzado, I saw you at the beach and I wanted to lift weights, and then you almost killed me in your convertible Rolls Royce, like, or Bentley or whatever it was. But no, I never had the opportunity to, so that was a strange one. But yeah, man, that guy, like, and I think it's like that way for a lot of people, whether it's your dad or people you're around, or you see something like, how many people is Arnold Schwarzenegger, inspired to go into the gym, or people still pumping iron. But I really remember, that, and then, obviously, getting the opportunity to go train at Zangus as a young kid was really impactful. And that was, when I was 14 years old, and George was that old powerlifter in our neighborhood who, was Thompson powerlifting team, trained Bill Kazmaier, invented the super suits and the wraps of Marathon Nutrition, and was in the supplement game. And that's where I trained in his garage from the time I was 14 to 18. So that was incredible mentorship.
That's so cool. That, what I mean, you and I have talked for and been friends for a while, and that's that's an even cooler part of the puzzle. Just really kind of rounding things out even more. So one of the stories that I really like to hear, and something that you've posted about, was somewhere along like the middle school age. Talk to us about your mom, and talk to us about wagon wheels.
And wagon wheel.
Yes.
So that was actually in high school. I came home and I was like 6'1", 165, and I wanted to put on weight and I wanted to get bigger. My older brothers were way bigger, and I remember telling my mom I'm pretty skinny. Like I had my neck was like this big, it was so skinny. And I was like, I need to do something. And my mom was like, well, there's all these like protein drinks and we can do this. And my mom's like, no, we're not doing that. We're gonna go on the pancake diet. So with every meal, I would wake up in the morning, I'd eat cereal or whatnot, and then she would make pancakes. And then for lunch, she would make extra pancakes. There was pancakes in my lunch, and then when I come home after school, she'd make pancakes. And then for dinner, I would have I'd have dinner and then some pancakes. And it, like in the beginning, it started where she would kind of make normal sized pancakes, and she would flip them in, and I started eating them fast. And then she got to the point where the pancakes got bigger and bigger. And then one day, she went out and bought all new plates. You remember the Chargers, the plates that go under dinner plates?
Yeah.
Like when you go to a fancy restaurant, there's always two plates on. There's a massive one and a littler one. She just bought the massive plates. So all of a sudden she threw this pancake on top, and it was like this big. And we were sitting there eating pancakes, and she was like, if you could get through two of these pancakes, it was pretty good. And I remember, I can't remember if it was my brother, me, or one of their buddies or something. We're like, dude, these things are the size of wagon wheels. And so the joke we started calling them wagon wheels. And I've put out recipes, and I've talked about this whole thing that my mom's, so it's pretty funny now. My little boy will wake me up and I'll be like, oh, what do you want for breakfast? And he's like, pancakes. And I'm like, dude, there is never a day where I am too busy to make you pancakes. So I'll make them. I make pancakes all the time because I'm always stoked to make them. I make a bunch of extras, and we're always happy to have them.
Are you making them legit wagon wheels yet, or is he starting?
No.
He's starting with tricycle wheels?
Well, he's got a little kid plate that's like a construction truck. Okay. And I make the pancakes just big enough to fit into the little pods.
Nice.
But when he graduates out of his construction truck plate into a bigger one, he'll get bigger wagon wheels.
Nice. Very, very cool. I always thought that was amazing because, I was so impressed that your mom, was able to fulfill your need for, trying to get bigger, but also didn't kind of bow down to try and just go and buy a bunch of just shitty supplements. She made you eat a lot of food. How do you think, if you're looking back and, how do you think that influenced your relationship with food? Because so many people, when they're younger, will try and cut corners and everything, and you weren't allowed to cut corners. In fact, you're actually giving a giant circle without corners. So you had to work so goddamn hard in order to kind of get to, what you wanted to accomplish. Talk about, do you have anything to say about that? Does that have anything to do with, relationship with food and hard work?
So what's funny is when we were growing up, my mom, before there was Sam's Club and Costco, it was called Price Club. And
Yeah.
they used to sell these big sleeves of hamburger patties. And so my mom would buy 10 of these hamburger patty things. And then what she would do is she would and then I at the point where my brothers and I got older, we ended up doing, but we would fire up the barbecue and we would just take the frozen ones and put them on. And then, you would make a couple hamburger patties, bring them in. And then my mom always had a rice cooker coming, cooking. And she would just give you a big scoop of rice and there would be 2 pieces or 2 hamburger patties on top. And then maybe a little Lowry seasoning salt if we were lucky, or a little butter. And that was pretty much staple diet for us. And it was funny, we had Stan Efferding on the Power Athlete Radio. And when he was talking about the vertical diet and hamburger meat and rice, and I was like, oh, you broke in and stole my mom's cooking book.
Exactly. I was just going to say that. I was going to ask if your mom was Stan Efferding.
Dude, so I firmly believe that Stan somehow, and I made the joke, and Stan, who I don't know if he has a good sense of humor, didn't find it funny at all. And I was like, I thought it was hysterical. I was dying. I was like, dude, you don't have a sense of humor? I was like, dude, the fact that you were stealing my mom's cookbook in the 70s and the 80s is hilarious. And now you're selling people on it. And then and I asked my mom, I was like, recently, a couple years ago, I was like, Mom, what was up with the hamburgers and rice? She's like, well, hamburgers were easy. We could cook them on the barbecue. And she's like, and have you ever seen a small Hawaiian? And I was like, no. And she's like, don't they eat hamburger patties and rice all the time? They're big people, obviously. And my training partner in college, Drake Parker, who is the nephew of Ed Parker, who started American Kempo, who's from Hawaii. He's from a little town outside in Honolulu, or side. It's Kaneohe, which is in not Kauai, but Oahu. And I remember going over eating him, and it was the same deal. His mom had a big rice cooker, and it was hamburgers and poi and the whole deal. So and it's just kind of an easy deal. I mean, I know I feed my kids, whatever we shoot or what's in the freezer, I'll make into ground meat, and I mix it with rice all the time. And if they're really lucky, I'll cook it with chicken broth or beef broth or something. So it's funny that Stan is capitalized and become such a success on that, which just seems awesome to me.
No, I've always thought about it, and being impressed with all the hard work, and kind of tracing it back to kind of those wagon wheels, and your mom, she was just so ahead of the time. I mean, she's so brilliant. That's fantastic. So
my mom was also not much of a I'll just give you an example. I remember when I was going in, I was either 7th or 8th grade, and I grew a bunch. And I remember in 6th grade I was pretty fast, and then in 7th grade I wasn't. And I remember we used to have to do these time runs for a grade. And I remember I always smoked them. And then all of a sudden I went to run that very first one, and I ran considerably slower and actually got a C on the run. And I was so mortified that I was going to have to come home and show my mom a report card with a C on it, that I asked the teacher, I was like, hey, is there any way I can do some extra running or get some extra credit to try to get up my grade? So she let me do an extra credit run every Friday after school. So I lied to my mom and told her I had to study late and I need to get picked up later, because the bus left. And I was like, well, I just got her to pick me up. And she's like, oh, I'm going to study. I'm doing this reading club. And really what I was doing was I was running extra to try to get more points so that I didn't have to come home, because I was really and this kind of goes back to that thing, like I said, in high school, not feeling strong enough. Shame is a powerful motivator. I know that, shaming people is in this awful thing, and we should never do it. And, it hurts, self-worth and the whatnot. But for me, shame and the feeling of not being adequate and not being up to snuff, now whether or not it was imaginary or whatever it was, or my mom's expectation of me, was always a powerful motivator. For the same reason, when I went out to go play football, that name that was on my back of my shoulders, Welbourn, when I played in the NFL, that name is there. That's just not me. That's my wife. That's my kids. It's my brother. That's my dad. And I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to play in a way that would tint anybody that has that name. So I've always taken that really very seriously. Not only the name, but that idea of shame. I don't like it, and that's a powerful motivator for me.
That's awesome, dude. Thank you for sharing that. That's fairly deep, and for people who love poop jokes and stuff, that's fantastic. And actually kind of answered a couple of our questions. We have so many people who are like, what's your why, or how do you get started? How do you get moving? And I'm sure you deal with this a lot, especially being, a Division I college athlete and a professional football player, you know, what do you say to those people? Do you share that story, or how do you push, you know, or how do you get people to understand that the motivation, they already have the motivation in there somewhere, they just got to find it? Or, you know, what is your answer to how do I get started?
You know, there's a million different cliches. Like the biggest one is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You know,
Right.
Every, you know, journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, and you can use all these different cliches. But I think the one thing that people are really looking for, and this is something that I talked to pretty extensively down at Flexi. It's really easy to do it when you have external motivation. Like, I have to go to this place, I have to survive, I have to do this, or else something will happen. And then all of a sudden you go home and it's just you, and there's nobody checking in that you're going out and doing the, you know, like there's nobody out there. And now all of a sudden that's to transfer to intrinsic motivation. And I think that intrinsic motivation is really, man, like, I would hate to say it, but it's almost crafted over a lifetime. Like, I was always highly motivated, and I was always worried that, you know, like the funny joke of like one suck of the lollipop of mediocrity and you're fucking mediocre forever. But, you know, and as long as you never unwrap it, never take the lick, you can avoid it. But I think it really comes down to like building this. And I really wish there was some, you know, magical, you know, Tony Robbins phrase that you could give people and they pay you $5,000 and instantly you anoint them as, you know, motivated and intrinsic motivation. But I think it really just comes down to like, you know, Angela Duckworth wrote a great book called Grit. That idea of like, how does grit, like, how does that stuff get built? And it starts at a young age. And I feel like that it's something can be developed later in life, but the easiest time to develop that grit and that tenacity and that hard work is at a young age. And I feel like we failed a lot of our kids. We failed, and I see this as a parent, a lot of parents fail their children. And it's because of either they don't know, or they're lazy, or they just don't care to fight. I tell my kids all the time, I will never give up. You will never beat me. You will never win. And just when you think that you got something over on me, I'll be there watching and smiling, and you're done. Like, you think you're going to sneak out of the house? I'll be there waiting for you. You think you're going to a friend's house? I'll already be there. You think you'll do something? I'm already ahead of you. And like, they kind of like look at me and I'm like, I'm telling you, I've done everything. I've been so bad that it doesn't even matter. Like, I am fucking ahead of you. And that's that kind of relentless pursuit of perfection. I just don't know any other way to do it. And so like when I meet people that are unmotivated, and I'm like, I don't know, you know, because motivation's personal. It's kind of like fitness, for example. Something that was a big deviation between me and CrossFit was this idea that fitness is increased work capacity per time movements, right? So they define fitness, and they effectively won the war on fitness. But fitness is so personal. Everybody on this podcast or this interview has a different definition of fitness based off of what fitness they need. The fitness you need as a powerlifter is different than you need as a strongman, as a quarter-mile runner, as a person who runs 100 miles, as a football player, as a housewife who, you know, wants to be fit to chase her kids around, or a dad who wants to, you know, go lift some weights and do some other stuff or go hunt. So that level of fitness is very personal to each person. What's not personal is performance or accomplishment. Like, did I do the training that allowed me to be successful? And I think the problem that we run into with a lot of people is they don't have an end game. They don't have a goal. They don't have something they're working for. You know, so if fitness is just a personal thing for you, then like you can kind of melt it in any way that you want. If your fitness involves just being healthy enough to eat a pint of ice cream every day, well, then that's fine. So I think what I started moving people away from is not this idea of fitness, which is so personal and is so abstract in so many ways, but a fitness or to a performance goal. Like Mark was really heavy. He wanted to get shredded for a bodybuilding show and get in shape. He had a goal. He had a deadline. He had to make it by a certain point. And either he is the hero that stands with his fist up, or he's the loser that doesn't make it. So my biggest thing for people is, if you want to have intrinsic motivation, set yourself a goal that you can't get out of. Like, hey, I want to be fit enough to go hunt elk. Okay, great. Pay the money. Spend $7,000, and a year from now, I'm going to go hunt this elk. And if I'm not ready or I'm not fit enough, then that's on me. I want to do a bodybuilding show. Okay. You know what? Then sign up, pay the money, and say you're going to show up. And if you show up out of shape, then you know what? Stand up there and get shamed, or stand up there and be the victor. And I think we've effectively not forced people into these kind of end games of these goals. Like, accountability is a big one. The other one too is, man, is everybody thinks they're by themselves. That's another big one I've been really meditating on. women are really good about creating social circles and having friends and support. Dudes are really solemn, and there's a reason why, suicide is way higher in men, and it's because guys feel alone, and they're, it's not considered macho, or you're considered a coward or a pussy or whatever it is for reaching out and telling people like, hey man, I'm lost, I need help. And I see it a lot. And at Power Athlete, we get hundreds of emails from people around the globe, and there's thousands of people following our training programs on Train Heroic, and people reach out and they are like, hey, I listen to the podcast, I have a problem, can you help me? And I always return that stuff, and I try to always help people, because when I was weakest and when I was young, when I didn't know anything, I had mentors and I had people. Still to this day, I have people smarter than me mentor me. And I think people just have to ask for help, and it's amazing. If you ask somebody for help and they don't help you, that's not on you, that's on them, and they're a fucking shitty person.
I agree.
So,
that was an incredible answer, and you touched on so many things, but something that I want to kind of rewind and check back in on. You're shit talking your kids and, telling them, you're going to be in front of them and all this other stuff, talking about sneaking out of the house. Just for reference point, how old are your kids?
My daughters are 9.
Okay. Just wanted to check in and make sure that everyone kind of understood, how far ahead of the game you actually are. They don't even know that that you could have snuck out of the house. They didn't know that was an option yet, John.
Well, I started talking to them about when they were 4 years old. I started talking to them about when you guys go to college.
Right.
And we talk about it all the time. I'm like, hey, when you guys go to college, what do you want to study? I'm going to be so excited to come visit you at Parents Weekend, go to a football game. I can't wait to see your dorms. Like we talk about this all the time, that when they grow up and they go to college and they go out and they become the person that I want them to be, not necessarily expect them to be. But I tell them all the time, I told my son this morning, I'm like, dude, you are the coolest little kid. I am so stoked to be your dad. I'm so excited to see who you grow up to. I'm so excited to be your partner, your mentor, your dad in this journey. And I tell my daughters the exact same thing. I'm like, dude, you guys are so cool. I'm so excited to see who you guys are when you grow up. I want to see who you marry. I want to see your kids. I want to see your life. I want to see your successes. I just want to be, I will forever be your biggest fan, and I want to be a part of everything.
And that's one of the things that, I count myself really lucky being your friend and kind of getting to see that part of your life, the relationship you have, not only with your wife, but also with your kids. It's so impressive, because I think it's very unfortunate nowadays. Anything that we see, on the media is, about shitty dads and kids being fucked up and everything along those lines. And here you are in Texas Hill Country, raising absolute fucking savages. And, it's especially as someone who's got, twin girls as well, there's that, immediate connection with us. But it's just forever impressive, you as a dad, and to get to watch you, interact with your kids is, nothing short of awesome. And, you've influenced me on how I raise my girls and how I raise my kids, and, how I talk to them as well. So, you keep talking about, all these things, and you're talking about books and grit, and, you're talking about all your mentors and everything. And you're talking about this whole shame side of, kind of motivation. I would have never known that about you, but what motivates you doesn't necessarily matter, I think. But what I'm curious about is, you were a very successful football player. You went to Cal Berkeley. You have, I don't even know how many businesses at this point. You literally built the room you're sitting in. You built your gym with your own hands. You're building cars. I was on your property, and it looked like a junkyard, which was amazing, but you're somehow fashioning these things together, putting wheels on them, and they move. Your intellectual curiosity has always fascinated me. Can you tell us about where that came from? We can understand, the whole, write the check thing, put a date on something, have a goal. Did you do the same thing with, intellectually stuff and, learning? Because, you can call up some real heavyweights when it comes to, dietary, strength and conditioning side of things, your podcast. You can hang and talk with anybody, for someone who could very easily be labeled a dumb jock. What was the motivation to be able to be as smart as you were successful physically?
So I was a rhetoric major in college, which is like an English philosophy degree, but it's really a classics degree in a lot of ways. We read, everything from, Seneca, and it's pretty funny now. Everybody's a Stoic, but even like the
Right.
people before that and that. I mean, I read Marcus Aurelius Meditations. Like I read Cicero's work. I mean, all of this kind of classic stuff. But what was pretty amazing to me was that if you look at like the Dark Ages are pretty fascinating. And the reason that they're called the Dark Ages is because we don't really know much about them. And I think it was because the sun was blotted out. One of my professors from Berkeley just wrote a really interesting book on the Dark Ages based off of his research in Greece. And what's crazy is actually one of my professors, I took his class over 20 years ago and we still stay in touch. So that's always a pretty good indicator for me. And he just sent me his new book. But what was pretty amazing is after the Dark Ages, what pulled us out of that and got people moving was really the Crusades. And now all of a sudden you have all these people going to the Holy Land to fight the wars. We take over Jerusalem, and there's a series of crusades that allow all these people to move, and that was what sparked the Renaissance. And that was people moving. And so that what happens is when people move and new things happen, they get exposed to culture and art and thought and writing and new thoughts, and all this information comes in, and you have this cultural revolution. And I think for me, I was always had a ton of admiration for these guys that were Renaissance men. They could, they were warriors, they were poets, they were writers, they were cooks, they were, philosophers and thinkers and artists and painters. And like people were not one-dimensional. And I think for me, I never wanted to be one-dimensional. I always thought of myself more in that vein, that I wanted to be able to, play football. I wanted to be able to fight. I wanted to be able to lift weights, and Socrates and Plato and all those guys always talked about the beauty of the human movement and the body. So to be in good shape and to be intelligent, have intellectual pursuits, and just always be in kind of a thirst to learn. I always had a feeling of this is kind of maybe a common thread for me in my life. I've always looked at being a beginner and like being a white belt as I've always just like loved it. I love going in and being unknowledgeable. And like a lot of people don't want to go to the gym because they don't know what to do. I don't want to go to martial arts because I'll be a white belt and I won't know what to do. People are going to make fun of me. And I'm like, everybody has to start somewhere. And so the day that you can embrace being a beginner and not knowing anything, and begin to love the journey of going from uninformed to informed, where like I started welding and I couldn't weld and I sucked at it, and I practiced and I went and welded with people and I learned. And then I went from this point of like I couldn't build anything, all of a sudden I could fabricate cool shit and I could weld. And the people that I was mentoring or working with, who are just some of the most unbelievable, most amazing fabricators, are like, dude, it's not bad, I would hire you. And that's always nice. Or to sit down and read and have people on our podcast and be able to intellectually spar with some of the smartest people on the planet. Like that idea of being for the same right, like I go out and I hunt and we'll cook. I mean, I think the world is really boring for one-dimensional people, and I don't want to be one-dimensional. I want to have a varied skill set, and I want to be able to execute and do a lot of things, and I want to be able to not just be mediocre at a lot of stuff, but master a lot of skills. And that's where I think it comes from.
I got to tell you, I think if there was if I had a vote as far as like a modern Renaissance man, you'd be very, very high on my list. You're I really consider you someone who's really done some really, really awesome stuff and continues to do some awesome stuff. So let's kind of transition that whole philosophy and kind of Renaissance man and, thought process and philosophy of things into kind of into the gym. You started talking off, that you did, 115 pounds for a couple of reps when you started, and then you, ran all the way up to, 585, deadlifting and, whatever. So, being able to finally start to lift in high school, what was your philosophy then? What was it like at Cal? What was it like in the NFL? And what was it like, kind of coming out of the NFL and transitioning into, what you have now at Power Athlete?
Yeah, so when we started, it was really pretty awful. There was probably about 50, 100 dudes in a room with one coach sitting in his office reading a Sports Illustrated. They wrote the workout up on the board in chalk, and it would look like it was actually the Russian squat cycles is what we did for everything. Yeah, 6x2, 6x3, 6x4, and that whole deal. And that we just did that over and over again. The problem was there really wasn't much education in terms of movement until I went to Zangus's. And then when I went to George's, the programming became very, very customized. It became very, technique focused. And so the lifting that I did at high school was pretty awful. When I went to George's, that's when all of a sudden it became much better. And then I met a guy named Tasso Papadakis, who was a year older than me and kind of took me under his wing. Tasso was probably, he's probably the strongest kid I've ever met under 16 years old. At 15, I watched him squat 500 for 10, and I watched him bench 315 for 10 at 15 years old. He went out and played fullback and linebacker for USC, and ended up having 2 torn ACLs and ended up retiring. But he was an absolute monster, and he was my training partner. And we trained twice a day, and we did way too much volume, and had injuries and overuse stuff and tendonitis and that, because we just didn't know any better. And then when I went to Cal, we had a guy named Eric Cohn, who was more of a powerlifting guy, so the system was very familiar. And then I think he was there 3 years, and then they brought in a guy named Todd Rice, who was a pure Olympic lifting guy. So from that point on, all I did was snatch, clean, and jerk, front squat, push, press, and do plyometrics and sprint. And that program worked pretty well. I snatched 130, clean and jerk 172.5. And I think that like transitioned from just more kind of, powerlifting into something more dynamic. I've always believed that Olympic lifting is a really shitty way to get strong, and it's a really crappy way on how to develop athletes. But if you're already strong and a really good athlete, it becomes something where you just fucking shoot to the moon.
I think it's a great way to express athleticism. If you have that strength, and you someone can finally teach you how to do it. I don't know if I could have drawn up a better thought process for you, power lift and just generally get a little bit of jacked and strong and then start to Olympic lift. Now you're actually going to have somebody. You're going to actually be able to build an athlete.
So yeah, before I really got into Olympic lifting, I'm at back squat at 600 pounds. So that was always pretty helpful. And then I remember they didn't let me back squat anymore, so I ended up front squatting 500, which was pretty good. And when that happened, my vertical jump went up, my speed went up, and everything. And then when I went to the NFL, and I ended up getting hurt my rookie year. I started, and then I ended up tearing a tendon in my knee. Came out, rehabbed, and came back and started 16 games that next year. And I had decided that I was going to move down and live in Florida. So I went down and lived in Tampa, and ended up meeting up with probably one of the best strength coaches I know, and probably one of the most amazing human beings I know, a guy named Rafael Ruiz. And Rafael and I trained for the next 7 years, and he trained me most of my NFL career. And it wasn't until I moved back to California towards the end of my career that I didn't train with him. And Rafael, I just handed him the reins. And I was smart enough to know what we were doing, but that wasn't my job. My job was to pour myself into what he needed me to do. And so I'm smart enough wherewithal to ask questions and to kind of understand the whole thing. And then over the years, I had, developed just a lot of really interesting information in terms of people I trained with Rafael or any of the other people I worked with. And I would always go, if there was somebody that we could go train with, or somebody who was doing something amazing, always went and worked with them. So I think when I retired, I had this really amazing knowledge and just this bank of knowledge that I just had, and I didn't really think it was of value. I remember when CrossFit called me and they asked me, hey, do you want to start, come and work for us and help us develop our technology on how to train athletes? My first question was, do people want to know this stuff? And Greg Glassman's response is yeah, I think normal people want to know this stuff. And the proof was in CrossFit football, because we got 17,000 hits the first day, and it virally infected the CrossFit community to the point where before CrossFit football, and I know this is kind of wild, their strength was just another element of fitness. And when we put it on the pedestal, now you can't walk into a CrossFit gym that doesn't have some periodized strength template mixed in with a conditioning workout. So that was my contribution, and I feel very, very lucky to have kind of put that at the forefront. The other thing is everybody was doing one workout, and I was programming 2, and now people are doing 20 workouts. So we had a really good influence in that community. And it was, having dealt with CrossFit HQ or old CrossFit HQ, the strength of the CrossFit world is the community and the affiliates and the people that are doing it. CrossFit Inc. and those Martians were, succeeding in spite of bad business, and, were led by a morally bankrupt human being and had poor leadership for a lot of years. So I'm really excited to see what happens to CrossFit with much better leadership in place.
Agreed. So let's press pause real quick. Can you tell the story of how the hell you ended up at the CrossFit Games and competing at the CrossFit Games for us?
Yeah, so I was training. I got tired of driving up to Carson, which is where Athletes Performance was when I was living in Newport Beach. It was, it could be anywhere from 15 to 3 hours on the 405 freeway. So I started training at a CrossFit gym that was right around the corner, owned by a certain individual who I'm not going to necessarily mention his name. I don't care for him very much. So I started training at his gym. And we were, busting ass, and I was getting ready to go and play my 10th year in the NFL. And about 3 weeks before, it was really just right around 4th of July. So we usually went to training camp about the 3rd week of July. Right around that time, CrossFit HQ called up and asked if I would be interested in doing the CrossFit Games. I didn't know what the CrossFit Games were. And my comment was like, yeah, sure, I'll go out there and just crush these people. So they sent out a video camera and they filmed a bunch of stuff. And then I went and I had not been doing CrossFit. I had been lifting heavy weights and sprinting and doing a bunch of conditioning stuff and training more similar to what I needed. And then we transitioned for about 3 weeks and worked on muscle ups and handstand push-ups and all these kind of skills that you would need to be successful in CrossFit. And then we went out to Aromas, and I think out of 200 people, I think I was in the 70s or the 80s. I got absolutely annihilated with 275-pound deadlift. 800-meter uphill runs. So, and then they made a movie out of it. It's called Every Second Counts. So it was really just, there was no training. It was purely off the cuff of, and the thing I still laugh at is I was 32 years old at the time. If I was like 22 or 23 or 24, I would have absolutely fucking slayed that thing. Just because of the fact that like I was, after 10 years in the NFL, like that's might be aging you in dog years. I was probably a little old compared to what those guys were. Right. If I had been more similar in age, because most of those dudes were in their 20s, I think I might have done better, but I was also, 308, 312 pounds. And the next biggest guy was like 190.
Yes. That's awesome. So with everything you have going on, both, from your football background to now you're kind of, coaching in the weight room. Can you give us, it doesn't matter, or maybe you can give us 3 things that drive you crazy about, parents who are trying to make their kids football players, but whether it's on the field or in the gym, and 3 things that drive you crazy that just go on kind of in the gym. We're just going to say 3 things that you love, 3 things that you hate, kind of on both sides. So I'm really asking for like 12 things here, but, just kind of shoot off the cuff because, you're not shy.
What I really dislike is the idea that you can do sports-specific training in the weight room. So this idea of like, hey, we're going to do speed ladders or this, and we're going to do this sports-specific training, that's a fallacy. Anything that's done within the confines of the gym is, general physical preparedness. When you're out on the field doing your actual training, like let's say you're playing football, you're out there with the ball, you're catching your running plays, you're actually doing the training that's required of you. That's where SPP happens, and it doesn't happen within the confines of a weight room. So I think that that's a big one. The other one that actually kind of drives me crazy is, and we work with a lot of, we work with the guys at Development Group, and I was just down in Flexi working with those guys. So we work with a lot of law enforcement. We work with a ton of military. And there's this kind of idea that how the military should train, and there's different things and like apps and programs, and they're all like SEAL fit grinders and this, and it's like, no, dude, this isn't what you guys need. What you really need to do is you need to lift some heavy weights so you can get some max motor recruitment, you can get bigger and stronger. You need to create a big aerobic base so that you got a ton of recovery, and you need to get most of your conditioning in the demands of what your job asks you to do. So that looks like either Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or fighting or boxing, and being able to move with, let's say if you were a plate carrier or a heavy pack, to be able to move fairly long distances with it. So like if I could write a perfect program for law enforcement, it would look like lift some heavy weights, do something dynamic and maybe some med balls, create a big aerobic base, 3-4 days a week, give me some kind of that, MAP method, kind of lower, 70% kind of heart rate, kind of just basic aerobic fitness. And then I need you to get in the gym, and 3 days a week I need you to do, roll for a couple hours Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I need you to get in the boxing ring. I need you to fight some rounds. You need to take some punches. You need what it feels like to have somebody lean on you. And I think if your training looked like that, most of law enforcement would be so far ahead, because one, if they got into a stressful situation where they got into a fight and somebody put their hands on them, they wouldn't be stressed out because they had done this every single day. If some dude wanted to throw hands at them, they knew how to throw hands. And they would be strong enough to be able to encompass any or encounter and strive over anything they run through. When we work with the guys in development group, their training is very, very simple. They lift heavy weights. They do a ton of sprinting because people that sprint carry more muscle mass than people that don't. They do their aerobic work. They do their Brazilian jiu-jitsu. They do their, dirty boxing and their fight and hand stuff, and, do a ton of fight work. And then they do their training that looks like their sport-specific work that either works with the gun, the kill houses, or any of that. And it's not like they're out there just basically burning themselves down with CrossFit workouts. Those guys have a very specific training template. And the reason they come to us is because I'm not trying to sell them something of what I imagine they should be doing. And the only receipt for whether or not it's good or not is basically how hard it is. So I'm really big on kind of reverse engineering. Tell me what the demand is, and we're going to designing a program. And it doesn't, the best things in the world don't have to be sexy. They just have to be very simple, very effective, focused on recovery. And I mean, over the last, we've been with Train Heroic for well over 5 years. In the time since before Train Heroic, I mean, I've delivered literally millions of workouts. We've developed, 12 million workouts that we've delivered to over 30,000 people through Train Heroic, where I've aggregated so much data. And one thing is universally true: the person that trains with the greatest consistency meets or makes the greatest gains. So like if you train and you give me 3 days a week for a year, you are farther ahead than the dude that gave me 6 weeks or 6 days for 2 weeks, 3 days for 1 week, and then was off for 4 weeks, but then came back. So the greatest success comes from the most consistent individual that has a plan in place.
So I'm assuming that you love these people who with magical programs that pop up all the time with, zero knowledge base and, nothing else behind them, but they have a magic cure, a magic bullet. Those are probably your favorite people in the world, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's, something that, somebody was talking about the other day is just, the credibility factor. And I was very fortunate, like the credibility in the situation I cut my teeth on playing in the NFL and the training that I did leading up to that was, it's impossible to fake that stuff. But then as equally long as I was in the NFL, I've been doing this. And I cut my teeth not only on, CrossFit football. I mean, I didn't personally teach 300 plus seminars, but I taught well in excess of, maybe 200 of them, and traveled the world every single weekend, meeting the people doing the program and putting them through my seminar. And so I got the opportunity to train thousands of athletes around the globe and also within the confines of my own personal gym. And a lot of the theories and ideas I had that were, from some of the smartest people, I've always said I stand on the shoulders of giants. I was able to implement not only within my programming here and here, and then when we took everything over to Train Heroic, I had a much greater ability to collect all this information and keep my little ecosystem so I could test everything. And now we run up to 9 programs, and there's thousands of people a day doing this stuff. So it's allowed me to run this sea monkey experiment or whatever it is in real time, and I've been doing it for over a decade. And whenever somebody asks me about something, I'm always like, well, here's what the research tells me. Here's what our numbers say, and we know this to be the case. And it doesn't have to be fancy; it just has to be consistent. And people always, well, what about this? What about this? And I'm like, well, what's the greater vision? I had a guy ask the other day, where do chains and bands fit into this? I'm like, great. Where are you within your training lifestyle? How long have you been training? Have you already developed the mastery of the movement that you can to add some form of accommodating resistance to increase it? Are you still getting stronger doing what you're doing? Well, then why would you change anything yet? You're looking at these advanced principles that work for a very, very specific individual at a very specific time within their training. And, too early, you don't develop the foundational information and the patterns you need to be successful. And, I'm like, it's almost like people are looking for the most complicated shit. I need to get in shape, so I'm going to take a walk. You're not going to climb Mount Everest, but that's what people do within the training system. Right. You take a guy who's never lifted weights and he wants to go out to West Side and train with Louis Simmons. And I'm like, believe me, there's a lot of fucking locks and keys that you have to get through before you enter into that stuff.
All right, so we have a couple of questions from some people online. I've got a couple of follow-up questions here, and then we'll kind of start to wrap things up as we kind of go. So I'm going to hand things over to Andrew and see if we can get a couple of questions.
Cool. We got about another 10 minutes. I can get a hard stop.
Yep.
You can do it. Awesome.
Cool. Then, yeah, we'll just jump right into it. This one comes from Dana. She's asking you basically, after all your accomplishments, how are you able to stay motivated? Because she was a college athlete, and now things obviously don't quite match that intensity that she faced when she was, competing in college. So for yourself, how are you able to still push forward and still, stay hungry?
One, I don't know anything else. So I like there is nothing else. There is no like easy day. I mean, it's just like, this is what we've done. This is who we are. Also, my wife is in phenomenal shape. I like the shape and the grind of my wife is, I'm afraid that she's outworking me every single day. So I think having a partner who is that dedicated and that like dialed, I mean, she's probably 4 weeks out from any bodybuilding show she wants to do. I mean, she's super fit. But she's not. I mean, she's like 5'1", probably 118, 120. Goes to across the gym and just crushes people daily. Rides horse. I mean, she's super fit. So I think having a significant other, as Jesse's significant other, can fucking lay the beat down on him at any moment. I think having a significant other who is like that, wakes you up, kicks me in the pants every morning to get up and bust my ass to the gym. So I think that's important. I also have 3 little kids that I have to, I have 2 9-year-old daughters that are going to need me for a long time. I have a son that, is almost 5, and he's going to need his dad for a long time. And, fitness and health and training, like I want to be a big, strong dude forever. I mean, who knows? I never know what's going to come up, but I always want to be strong and in a position. Like the other night, I killed that pig, and there I am, picking up a 250-pound pig, pretty easy to put it in the back, when most dudes I know would need 3 people to get it in. So I like being physically strong, and I don't know anything else. Like that. It's just what we do. It's who we are.
Yeah, stay strong. It's harder to kill you, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So we actually have, we can finish with this last question. It's actually coming from our boy Josh. So Josh, if you want to go ahead and take over from here, go ahead.
Yeah, John, I had a question for you. That being, what are some of the ways you build buy-in with some of the high school coaches that are maybe interested or kind of like maybe even aren't fully aware of how successful your program is, and maybe those high school coaches are kind of stuck in the old school way, or just maybe don't have the knowledge base to properly train the athletes themselves? So what are some ways you establish some buy-in and communicate with those coaches?
I think people don't know what they don't know. And I know that's a funny cliche, but I think a lot of times with the high school coaches, and I remember a long time ago, somebody told me that you fail at the margins of your experience. And if you need more, if you want to fail better and you want to do margins, you got to push, you got to learn, you got to learn. And I think for a lot of these coaches, their margin is so short that when they fail, it's literally like one step. And it's because they just don't have access to a lot of good information. So I think what it comes down to is one, ego, realize that there's always somebody who might be able to do a little bit better, and then being humble enough to ask. People reach out to us and we get a ton of emails from high school coaches, like, how do we come, how do we do this? How do we do this? And I'm like, you just implement the program. It's not complicated. It's just pretty simple, but consistency and just doing the right things. I think that, especially when you're training like high school kids or really people in that element, there is like, what is the maximal return for the minimal investment? Everybody's always focused on how much can I do. If you can give me 3 days a week, then we're going to maximize what we can get for 3 days. And I think giving those guys a pretty solid game plan is something that's attainable. But it's also going to take them to humble themselves and, not, try to search every forum and message board and look for some secret program that they're going to find on, page, 475 of some weird thread on Power and Bulk Extreme, forums or something. So, but for the most part, if you look at what the very, very successful teams are doing, it's pretty simple, man. Like, they're lifting heavy weights, they're sprinting, they're doing plyometrics, and they're making sure that their guys are in good enough shape to be able to survive the task at hand. So maybe drop some ego and a little bit of buy-in, and realize that there's some really sharp people out there and the resources are readily available.
Thank you.
All right, John. So 2 things, and we'll kind of let you go. Wanted to see if you had a question for our guest next week. We have Steffi Cohen and Hayden on from Hybrid Athletics. Steffi, as you know, all-time world record holder, fabulous lifter.
Strong.
Therapy, she's a stud, and behind every strong woman is an even stronger dude, and Hayden's just a savage himself. Do you have any questions or anything for those guys?
Yeah, I'm actually really interested on how COVID has affected their business, and more importantly, how COVID has changed really the landscape for powerlifters. She had some pretty amazing contests and hit some like world record numbers. And I wonder about somebody who's in that kind of elite status who's, you know, kind of looking to push the boundaries, all of a sudden, like, there's no more powerlifting meets, and it's wiped away. People aren't able to travel. Like, you can't go to Australia. I mean, so like, as I was looking at, like, for her, you know, what does that do to her as an individual, where she's kind of in the, you know, the prime, she's in this like apex where she's like ascending, and now all of a sudden you take this like taper off. I'm really interested to see how she comes back and how she's managing that. And then I know they do run some, they got a pretty bitchin' gym down in South Florida. I only know that because, you know, the world's biggest fangirl, Matt Vincent, loves to fucking blow up every Instagram. So yeah, I like the other day I was laughing. Matt Vincent's got a sponsorship by fucking Michelob Ultra.
Yes.
And he's over there like him and his girl out in the woods with Michelob Ultras, and I'm like, oh Jesus, just somebody shoot him now. I was like, fucking Matt. I was like, God damn it, like riding bicycles, and like, I was like, dude, you're living the life, bro. I mean, you're fucking driving around in your truck, just fucking living the life. Goddamn, Michelob Ultra. Oh, dude. Yeah,
good for him. And it all started from throwing shit in a field, right? Who knew?
Dude, the best, and I love it, dude. I just was, yeah. So like I love that, like, and that's how I got to see their gym and kind of learn about them. Obviously, I saw the world record stuff, and Matt was like spoke volumes about them. But I'm really interested to see for her as that kind of apex, like at the peak of performance where she was at probably in 2019, all of a sudden coming into 20. I'm interested to see what that does for her motivation, if she can continue to kind of train through that.
Awesome. And before we let you go, quick story. Out of everyone that you've ever seen, worked with, played with, etc., give us the craziest athletic story or athletic feat that you've either seen one of your teammates do on, off the field, in the gym. What story do you have? What can you kind of send us off with?
Yeah, I watched the dude, Boomer Grigsby, who was our fullback. I was lifting weights, and he walked over to the platform, and I think I was doing RDLs, had like 405 on the bar. And he walked over after practice with cleats on a platform, and basically reverse muscle cleaned 405 with metal plates, and then push pressed it overhead, brought it back down, and set it down very comfortably with spikes on wood. So he was wearing football cleats with spikes, and basically reverse curled this 405 and push pressed it, brought it back down and set it down. He goes, how was that? And I'm like, you just set the fucking American record, dude. It was like the silliest thing. I watched a guy bench, I think it was 565 for a triple in under 5 seconds.
Jesus.
You know, so I watch, I mean, like I've watched people do things where I'm like, man, I could train a lifetime and never do that.
You just walk out of the gym after that?
No, you just think like, fuck, I got to work harder. You know, like, even though I'll never be able to do that, I got to have something special. So, I mean, I've had some pretty interesting opportunities within my own, like things that I've done where I've looked back and been like, man, that was pretty good. But I definitely remember that reverse curl 405 to push press was like, motherfucker.
Well, John, we really, really appreciate your time, buddy. Thank you so much. Can you let everyone know where to find a little bit more about you? Where can we find, you know, what you're doing, what's going on? You know, this is your time to kind of pimp yourself out.
Yeah, no, I'm easy to find at John Welbourn on social media and Instagram and Twitter. If you want to find me, you can go johnwelbourn.com, which points to my Talk to Me Johnny, which is my blog. Really, the place you find me is at powerathletehq.com. And we have a podcast, Power Athlete Radio, which Jesse's been on numerous times, and with 400 plus episodes. And so we do a ton of programming on Train Heroic. If you type in John Welbourn or Power Athlete, I am really easy to find. Like, if you can't find me, it's because you either aren't looking or are stuck in a cave with no Wi-Fi.
Well, John, again, really appreciate it. Love you so much, brother. Thank you for your time. Hey, everybody, if you love the Super Friends series, let somebody know. Post about it. Let everyone know. We got people like John coming on every other week, and we're going to kind of keep doing it as much as we can. John, thank you so much, brother. We'll talk soon. Love you. Take care. Love to Jamie and the kiddos, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, brother.
Thanks. See you.
Thank you.